Gwinnett Woodworkers are filming here in Rob's shop today, where our normal videos are done in Peachtree Woodworking classroom on Saturday morning with our live audience, and oftentimes the camera work and the background noise is not really conducive to YouTube videos. So we're doing some video sessions here in Rob's shop with a little bit more controlled environment. Okay, in the previous segment we was just making practice a stick like this. And if you get to where it looks very nice, it's still not going to be something that you're going to keep around for very long. It's going to end up in the fire bin. So what I want to show you is give you some ideas of things that you can make still being practiced, but if it comes out proper or correct, it's got something you can keep and maybe become an heirloom someday. And this is a little Christmas ornament in the form of a bell. And we're going to show you how I make those. Okay, I've already got my block of wood marked off. We showed in the last segment. I've got the centers marked. I'm going to mount it between centers initially between the drive center and the live center. And I'm going to, now you could perform this whole operation strictly between centers, and you'd be able to get it down to where you got a small contact point here, a small contact point here, but you could do all the shaping and then part it off and then manually trim up the bottom and the top by hand. But what I'm going to show you today with a chuck, it just makes it much easier and more convenient to do it with if you have a chuck. So what we're going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is make it round and put a tenon on it to put it in the chuck. So to make it round, I'm going to use the spindle roughing gouge. And we'll start out at just a little over 1,000 RPMs until you get it somewhat round. And again, I'm using sort of a peeling cut. The surface isn't going to be very clean, but I just want to knock off the corners at this point. We'll take it down a little bit farther than that. We'll do a bit of a shearing cut to get rid of some of those rough bits there. Yeah, that should be good. Okay, now I'm going to use, to make the tenon, I'm going to use a tool called a bedan. Now I could use a parting tool, but with the bedan, the width here is just about the same length that I want to make my tenon to go into the chuck. So we're going to use I've got my calipers set. For the diameter of the piece needs to be for these jaws that I'm using. So I'm going to use the calipers to determine tell me when the tenon is the proper size. And with the bedan, it's just going to be a peeling cut. Let's go up a little bit fast now that we got round. I'll go up to about 1,800 now. And just once you get rid knock the corners off, I can just lightly touch it with it. And the calipers are conditioned, as the calipers come, there's fairly sharp points on there. You want to round those points off so they don't catch into the wood when the wood's spinning like that. Okay, now this chuck, the jaws on this chuck that I'm using have got a slight amount of dovetail on them. It's not dovetail all the way down. Zoom in there, Bob. See just there's a little bit of a dovetail on the leading edge there. So I'm just going to come in and just make a slight bit of a dovetail there on the. I'm not going to dovetail the whole thing. So I'm going to use the skew, the standard cut skew, and I'm going to do two things. I want to come in this shoulder here. This shoulder here needs to rest. This shoulder I want resting on the surface of the jaws here to give me the best support. So I'm going to do two things when I come in here. I got the skew perpendicular to the bed of the lathe. So I'm just going to dress up this shoulder a little bit to make sure it's going straight in, and I'm just going to cut just a slight amount of dovetail on right there at the shoulder. The skew is completely flat on the tool rest. Just going about that much. Just to give me a little bit of dovetail there on the very tip. Okay, now you don't want. You want that to be completely flat, so that when it's resting on the face of the jaws, you want it to be resting on the whole surface. Where if that's not flat, if it's rounded, and it's only hitting out here on the jaws, you're not going to have as good a contact patch. So you want the best contact patch for that being flat, and it's going to be resting directly on the face of the jaws. If you don't get it completely flat, it's better for it to be indented a little bit, so the rest out here on the outer edge. And that brings another point, is that with this diameter wood, this shoulder is about the same thickness of these jaws. But if your piece of wood is much bigger and you cut it in at an angle, when you start compressing, when you bring the jaws up against, they're going to be touching, say, out here, and then when you start going in, it might actually lose contact with the jaw here as you go in. So if your piece of wood is much larger than the contact of the jaws, you may want to cut a relief in there so that the contact patch is that it's not much bigger than the size of the jaws here, so that you still maintain good contact on the outer part of the jaw. Okay, so we'll take the drive center, the drive spur out, and to take the drive spur out, you don't want to hold it. You don't want to hold it like this, because if you knock it out, those points are sharp and can cause blood on your hand. So just hold it here lightly here, or firm enough so it's not going to fly out of my hand, and I just knock it out and I hold it like that. Okay, so we're going to use the chuck. Little bit about the jaws here. The wood that I'm using is 2x4, 2x10, whatever, cut into 1.5 inch strips. So the standard jaws that typically come with chucks are 50 millimeter jaws. So by the time I put that tenon on there, get it round, even before I put the tenon, once I make it round, it's too small to fit in 50 millimeter jaws. I could, if my piece is completely square, I could grip it like that, with the points going out between the edges of the jaws. And if my block of wood is completely square, you get a pretty good grip on that like that. It'll hold it fairly well. But the preferable method is to put a tenon on it. But again, the problem of that with this smaller piece of wood, you can't put a tenon on it and still be able to grip it in these jaws. So the jaws that I'm using are called 35 millimeter jaws. And they're Robert Sorby jaws. They're not by the chucks that I'm using are Nova chucks. This is the Nova chuck. It uses Tommy bars. Put in those holes and to tighten the jaws down. This is the Nova G3 chuck. But the Robert Sorby jaws and the Nova jaws are completely interchangeable. So you have, one of the things I like about using the Nova jaws or Nova chucks is that you've got a large range of different different jaws that you can use on those chucks. So we're going to use the Nova G3 with the 35 millimeter Robert Sorby jaws. And this chuck uses a key. Just going to bring it down. I'm not going to tighten it up at this point. I'm just going to bring it down to where it's still loose. And then I'll bring the tailstock up so and use the tailstock to make sure put some pressure on, make sure I get good solid contact against the face of the jaws. And then once I got that, then I can tighten it down. And I know that I've got good contact out there on the face of that jaw. And I'd like to go around and do it at each hole a couple times, just because, you know, if the chucks are machined perfectly, you can just tighten it from one hole, but there's a little bit of free play in those jaws, in the chucks, so you want to go around and do each hole just like you would do on a drill press. So we're going down and clean this up, give us a good surface to start with, and we'll use the skew for that. And the speed I'm doing about, we'll do it about 1,800, 2,000 RPM, somewhere in that range. Again, this hand here is just holding it against the tool rest. I don't need to get a death grip on it. You just don't have as much control. With this way, this is just holding it down, and I'm doing the control with my back hand here. And when I'm doing, and I didn't really go over that on the first video on the basic tool usage. I want to cut down here on the lower quadrant of the cutting edge. If I get up here, it'll still cut. But when you get up, if you try cutting up here, let me put it this way. I want to maintain my cutting down here on the lower portion of the edge. If I start moving up in here, I run into danger of that point catching and digging into the wood. So I want to maintain my cutting area down here on the lower half of the edge. And I want to bring the bevel in and maintain before I engage the cutting. And you often hear the term rubbing the bevel. Well, if you end up rubbing if you have that bevel flat on the wood, it's not going to cut anything because the edge is really not being engaged. So you bring it down, then you raise the handle slightly until it starts cutting. And when you're actually doing the cutting, there's actually a clearance angle between the heel and even though slight, there's a clearance angle. So you're not really pressing it. And if you do press that heel of that bevel in, you might end up getting a washboard effect because it causes a little undulation. So a better term that I like to say is you're floating the bevel instead of rubbing the bevel. Because if you actually rub the bevel, it'll burnish the wood behind it, and you might end up with that washboard effect. So you can see that we got it. Even though this is, I don't know if it's fur. When you buy this construction lumber at Home Depot or Lowe's, it's called SPF. It can either be spruce, pine, or fir. I don't think this is pine because I'm getting, even with the skew, I'm getting a little bit of a tear out there. But this is a practice piece. Like I say, if you practice on it, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, you throw it away like you would have done it anyway if you're just doing the beads and coes on another piece. So the first thing you want to do, I got it down, this is going to be my the diameter of the outer part of the bell. The first thing I want to do is clean up the edge, and I'm going to be turning this. You could turn it in this orientation like this, or in this orientation like this. The benefit of this, you could possibly turn this in this orientation, you could turn it without support out here on the life center because you're going to be clearing this bit down here, and then you could pull this away and actually finish the handle and put the point in there for the eye screw with it still on the lathe. I'm going to be doing it this way because I find it much easier doing it this way. I can put back the tailstock off and I can actually finish the bottom part of the bell and get it good, and then it's much easier to part off the handle up here then and clean up the handle by hand. I find that's my preferable method for doing it. So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to clean up this edge here, and now I've got to remember that my live center has got that point on there, so it's got a point pressed into the wood a ways. So I need to come down and clean off enough wood so that once I get down here to do my clanger, I'm not going to have a remnant of that point from the live center pressing in there. So I'm going to be coming down, I'm going to be cleaning off about that much wood, and then that'll give me plenty of wood to work with to get down to still have a good area for the clanger, and not have to worry about the center point from the live center still being there. So to clean that off, we'll just take we could do it with a skew, but I'll show you with a spindle gouge. We'll clean it off with a spindle gouge. Okay, now when I make the entry with the spindle gouge, if I want to have the point, I want to make contact with the point first. If I don't make contact with the point first, it's going to want to skate it back across. I want to make contact with the point first, and I want to have the tool pointing to the center rotation to maintain that cutting edge right there needs to be completely vertical. And just to ensure, I'm going to put my thumb on the tool rest like that, just to give me a little bit more of an anchor point to get that cut started. And then once I got a bit of bevel rubbing right there, then I can rotate the tool around and get a more aggressive cut on the lower edge of that wing. Is that better light? Okay, so I'm going to come down and make a couple cuts like that. Okay, so that should give me plenty to work. I'll just clean up a little bit there so I don't have much to take off with. Okay, so stop and look and see what our grain looks like. Now you could just leave it flat across the bottom and just make a little bit of a bump there to represent the clanger, but I like to undercut it a little bit just to give me a little bit of a shadow in there. So I'm going to start off with a spindle gouge that has a bit more sharper angle in there to allow me to get in there, go in there and undercut that a bit. So the first thing I want to do is on the outer edge, I like to that leading surface right there, I like to bevel that a little bit, that surface right there, bevel that a little bit there. So that's the first thing I'll do is I'll just create a little bit of a bevel. Again, I want my cutting edge vertical and pointing directly toward the center rotation. Just a little bit of a bevel there. So now I want to come in and I want to just clean out and give me a little bit of undercut underneath there. So I can start with the bevel is rubbing on that surface there, and I can just rotate it around and start scooping out a little bit of that in the surface there, in the underneath side. And then you stop and look and see if you got any torn out grain in there. And that's pretty good for the pine. If you're using a hardwood, you'd be able to get a much cleaner cut. But with this soft pine, again, it's a practice piece, and it doesn't have to be completely perfect. But that's pretty smooth for the pine. Okay, so now I need to back the tailstock off. When you're through with the live center, you want to take it out because that's got sharp points on it. It makes a nice divot in your elbow if you would happen to brush your arm or elbow against that. So you always want to take that out when you're through with it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the larger spindle gouge. And now if I try to take that much wood off this way, I'm putting a lot of pressure, sideways pressure out here on the chuck. Even though I got a good connection there, I don't want to put any more undue pressure on there. So I'm going to come in and go back in this way, and I want to get that cleaned down to about 1/4 of an inch, because I'm going to be using that pen mandrel live center for support. So I need to get it down to 1/4 of an inch so that the clanger will fit inside that pin mandrel saver. So here's my caliper, 1/4 inch or inch. So I clean down a little, just clean off a little bit there. I need to get rid of that hole to start with. So I need to go down at least that far to get rid of that hole. You always want to stop the lathe to change the position of the tool rest. Even though on here it's not quite so critical on here, because since it's round, there isn't really anything for the tool rest to catch on to. But still, it's a good practice to get into, is always stopping the lathe when you move the tool rest. Okay, so I'm just going to use that lower edge. I'm just going to just shear off a little bit, just to get down past that hole that was left by the live center. And I want my clanger to stick out about 1/8 of an inch or so, just to give it an impression of being a clanger in there anyway. So we can go back to this. Now what I want to go down and still do the same kind of cut. I want to get that down to 1/4 of an inch so that little clanger will fit inside of my pin mandrel live center. And it doesn't hurt if it's smaller than that 1/4. It's a little bit smaller, but it doesn't matter. I just want to be able so that it fits inside of there. So now I'm going to start rounding off the clanger to make it round. So I've got the bevel rubbing there, and I'm just going to rotate the skew around and just start cutting on that wing, and just round that, just like I was cutting a bead. Okay, and now I want to just give the impression of a clanger instead of a straight lump sticking out of it. So I'm going to just come back going the other direction and just taper it down a little bit, going back the other way. Okay, let's just try another real light cut. Oh, I've got some tear out up there, so let's go back and we'll try doing it without the live center in there. See if we can take in a fairly shallow cut. See, a little bit of a tear out right there, so let's go down and clean that out. Okay, that's got rid of that, so now we'll come back in and again, I don't have any bevel to rub against there, so I'm using my thumb and putting that cutting edge pointing to the center. I want to just touch on the very tip, and I want that tip to be vertical, so I'm going to go in about right there. So that gives me a little bit to rest on now, so I can come in and I'm doing, since I don't have my tailstock out there to support it, I'm doing fairly light cuts. That's what that looks like. That's got to come out just a little bit more out there. There, that's pretty good. Okay, so go back, and the clanger's sticking out a little bit farther now, so I'll go ahead and take a little bit of that clanger off, make it a little bit shorter. Okay, and then clean that back up down there. Okay, I'm coming in, I'm sort of doing a shear scraping type of cut on the bottom of that bead, so I'm getting on the clanger, and then once I get to the bottom, I'm rotating it over. If I tried to go in like that, it would want to catch and drag. So I've got the flute really closed. Now, the flute being that's open, 90 degrees like that is completely closed. Like this is completely closed. So I've got it almost closed, so I'm just scraping on that bottom tip down there just to clean up that little bit right there. And that was pretty clean. Okay, now if I was going to finish, the one I'm doing the demo here, I'm just going to cut it. I'm not going to put any finish on it. We'll come back later in another segment and show you a quick and easy finish that we can do on these, and that's, like I say, quick and easy. But if I was going to finish it, I would go ahead and sand this and finish that surface at this point while I still got all my mass back here. Okay, so now we'll go back, and I want to go back to having support. So here's that pen mandrel live center, and it's 1/4-inch hole made to go on the end of a pen mandrel, and that's the reason I wanted to get that down to less than 1/4 inch so it would fit over there and give me support. Okay, I've just trial and error, trying different shapes and stuff, but this is the shape that I sort of like. So I'm going to use that as a reference point for shaping this bell. Okay, so I'm just going to use like I say, this is a bell that I made, and I just sort of like the proportions of that. So I'm just going to use that as a guide to shape another bell. So there's the points I'm interested in at this point, at this conjuncture or whatever. So I'm just going to mark that. That's going to be determine the top of my bell, and then down here this is going to get blown away. But what I want to do now is I want to take away some of this wood down here to give me clearance when I start coming in here shaping the bell. I need to get rid of some of this wood to give me clearance to be able to get down in there. So I'm just going to use this continental type gouge and just hog away some of this wood. And again, I'm using the bottom edge sort of like a skew fashion, giving me a 45-degree shear cut. Okay, the bell, the top of the bell is about, just get an idea of how much I want to take away. So I want to hog away a little bit down here on the corner just to get rid of some of that. Okay, I'm going to come in we'll start with the cutting edge completely vertical to get established, and then I'm just going to do a sweeping type of cut that you do in making a cove. I'm just going to scoop it out like I was doing a cove. And roll it over like I was doing a bead. So you can practice your beads and coves both here at one time. Let's get more wood out of there. Okay, that's pretty much the shape of the bell that I'm looking for. You want to just taper it down a little bit more right there. And when I'm doing this cut, I'm looking up here at the top edge. It's much easier to see the contour that's being formed than down here, looking down here where the cut is occurring. So I can look up there and monitor the shape that I'm getting. I can see it much easier. So I'm rotating the handle maintaining, you know, bevel support. The bevel is pointing in the direction that I want to cut. So that's pretty much it for the. Let's scoop that out just a little bit more right there. Yep. That pretty much matches what I'm looking for. Okay. So the next thing is I want to form this little detail down here. So I need to come down and get this down to about that diameter right there. Okay, I'm going to switch to my other trusty gouge. It's got a bit more of a cute angle on it to be able to get down into that detail. Here I'm practicing my V-cut. So see, you can do you can make the different types of cuts on this one item, both you know, beads and coves and V-cuts. You can practice. Okay, so that's pretty good for that. You always want to stop it and make sure you don't have any chip out on there, because that's going to be, well, there's a little bit of chip out right there, so we need to come back and clean that up a little bit more. A little slight amount there, a little bit more. It could be a little bit smaller also, so we'll take it off and just make it a little bit smaller and get rid of that little nick. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, now the handle, shape of the handle. Here's one handle I did. It's pretty much just straight in. And I just don't care. It just looks kind of clunky from my way of thinking. I like this little smaller here and a nice, you know, ogee curve there. I think that's just a nicer looking handle. So I'm going to do that. So my narrow part, I'm going to again practice my cove cutting. I'm going to make my narrow part about right there. The end of the handle is going to be about right up here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this area here worked down to the dimensions of, or the thickness of my handle. Go back to the larger spindle gouge. In fact, we could use this. We're talking about these two spindle gouges here. These are both swept back wings. This one is a Sorby, Robert Sorby spindle gouge, and that's pretty much the way that gouge came. They sell it in conventional and swept back wings. This is what they call their swept back wings. This is a grind that I got from Jimmy Clues. This one over here is swept back even farther. They're both about 45-degree angle nose bevel, but the wings on this is swept back much farther. And with that, you get more stuff. You can do, you know, bevel, or I mean, skew type bevel cuts on that wing being swept back that much farther. I'm up there on that wing, pretty much just like you would with the skew. Okay, so that looks like pretty good diameter up here. That thickness right there is the thick part of my handle. And that looks about right up there. So let's remark that the end of the handle is going to be about right there. Okay, so now I want to, in the wide part of the handle, I should do that too. Got the narrow part, and I want to put the wide part of the handle maybe about right there. So I'm going to, that's going to be taped down there, and I want to create a nice ogee curve down through the meat down there at the bottom, and like in my narrowest spot. It's going to be about right there. So again, this would be tool rest just a little bit high. So I'm gonna, like I was doing a cove, I want to get down to the narrow part there, come in from both directions until I get down to my narrowest part. That's pretty good there. So I'll come in and meet that. Okay, and now I want to come over here and just sort of make, again, my ogee curve. I'm going to twist a little bit too high. Okay, all right. I'm going to bead up here in this part and then end up down the bottom like I was doing a cove. And then sort of feel it, see what, just a little bit of a raised area right there. Okay. Okay, now we'll come down. You need to get rid of some make some clearance back here in the back. Okay, so now I went around, got the curve going that way, around this curve going back down this way and end up right there. And finish up vertical just like we did when he was doing the bead. Now I want to go down, take this down to about 1/4 inch down here for now. If we want to do any sanding on the, even though we're not going to be finishing it, if you want to do any sanding, now's the time to do the sanding. And we got a little bit of a tear out there, but the bell is actually pretty clean. We don't really need to do anything on there. We'll just come in and touch that up with some sandpaper. I got a little bit of a tear out there, and I'll just get rid of the pencil line and just touch that up with some sandpaper. I think we got some 180. Yeah, I think it's the 180. Yeah, 180. And you turn the speed down to do the sanding. It's saying about 300 RPM. Now I don't want to sand over and lose my nice little detail there. My sharp edge, I don't want to go over that edge. I want to maintain that sharp edge there. And then just feel it, make sure that it's got rid of the any little ridges in there. That feels pretty good. And then we'll go down to, I got 220. And we'll finish up with some 320. That's the 180. 320. Actually, I want to round this over a little bit more here. I got a pretty good flowing curve there, but it's sort of straight there. I want to round that over just a little bit more there. Go back up to about 2,000. Yeah, that's better. And I probably can just do that with, oh. Yeah, it feels good. Okay, so we're ready to part it off. Now we can leave the tailstock up here because once we part it, it's not going to do anything odd. It's just going to stop turning. And you can just catch it with your hand, so there's no danger of leaving the tailstock up there. You could take this tailstock away and just hold to support it with your hands, but we'll do it this way. Get this down. Now I don't want to. One thing, depending on how the handle, what this part up here is going to be used for. If you got with the pressure out here coming in from the tailstock, we're driving that bearing through that little bit of wood, and as I get that down narrow, it probably will just twist out and leave a little bit of a hole in the handle. Well, if you're making something that you didn't want a hole in the handle, then you'd want to back the tailstock off to where you're not driving that bearing and putting extra twisting force on there. But in this case, since I'm going to put a screw eye hole in there to put the screw eye in. The tear out, if I do get a little bit of a tear out, it's going to mark the center of where my screw eye goes. So it's going to be actually beneficial if it does tear out a little bit. When I get it down, I want to get just whittle away at it, just slightly. Don't put a lot of side pressure on it. I'm just whittling away at it, convincing it that it wants to come apart right there. And there we have. So I just got a little bit, and I can easily touch that up. Finish off that handle with some sandpaper. Or if I did it the other way around, you'd have more work, finishing off the end down here. So I can easily finish that off with some sandpaper. And we'll do some, probably some 180. Yeah, 180 is what I grabbed here. Well, before we get rid of the center point, we still got that center point is still marked there. I want to put a little bit of a dimple there to mark my center point when I drill my hole. And get it. It wanted to follow the soft bit of the grain. That's good. So we'll just come in here and just clean that off. And I've got a drill bit, a numbered drill bit. I don't know what size it is, the size that fits the screw eyes that I've got, but I got just a pin vise and a numbered drill bit, 60 something. I'm just going to drill a little bit of a hole there. And the screw eyes, these get these at Peachtree Woodworking. They're both plated silver and plated brass color. We'll just grab one of those. There's a silver one. Make it a silver bell. And you just put the screw eye in. I didn't get that hole right in the center. Well, there we go. A practice piece. If it turns out you got an heirloom, if it doesn't, it's firewood. This is perfect now if unfinished. If the kids want to do painting or your wife wants to do painting, it's perfect for painting. Thank you for watching.